Hello, hello. Welcome back to yet another episode of Low Key Chaotic. I first and foremost want to apologize for the volume issue in last week's episode and also for the fact that this episode is late. Okay? I mean, the title of the podcast is the title of the podcast for a fucking reason. I am the epitome of chaos. But the fuck and the audio, I mean, everything is a representation of the title. The audio was a mess because, like, I recorded it in my bed and then I did something to shift one of the buttons on my mic and then the sound was kind of overexposed for like the last quarter of the episode and I tried to fix it as much as I could in editing, but stuff like that is only like so fixable. Like that's the type of shit they usually tell you to re-record, but I couldn't do that. That episode was like such a raw brain dump. There was no such thing as going back and re-recording that, so I just had to put it out. I hope it wasn't too annoying. But I'm literally holding my mic in the weirdest way possible right now. So I can guarantee that that is not going to happen again. And also, it's so funny. Like, I always like hit record and then feel like I need to rush into like saying everything. And I never take a sip of my drink or whatever. But I'm like, dude, I can chill. Like, I can edit those breaks out. Like, all it is a little more editing for me. But it's like more fun to record if I can take a sip of my Coca-Cola. I've been drinking Coca-Cola because I quit alcohol, so I'm trying to substitute the funness of it all with a fun drink. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just love my little Coca-Cola bevy. And I don't have I'm excited to report more on this sobriety journey that I'm going on, but as of yet, I don't have enough to say about it to make a whole episode about it, but let me know, are you guys sober? Are you drinking? If you use, I don't know, this sounds like I am an alcoholic. I didn't drink every day, but I drank how much every normal person casually drinks, definitely 1 to 2 times a week. Sometimes there's weeks where you drink 3 times a week because there's a birthday and then there's an after work drink thing and then there's Christmas and New Year's and whatever. But I had to quit for my health. I can just feel my body is not doing super great. But whatever, that's not the topic of today's episode. I also want to get in a habit of giving you guys updates at the beginning because sometimes I give them at the end of the episode, but I feel like people don't listen to the very end. So a few things that I said in the last episode that I don't think many people heard is number one, I'm bringing out a song soon, which if you heard my first episodes of the podcast, I was always talking about how always thought about making music and whatever, but I never found the courage to kind of just do it. And then I just did it, and now I'm going to release it, which is kind of scary, but also freeing. Like, I'm excited to just put it out because I've been sitting on it for a hot second now. And I just want to show you guys what I've been working on. And I'm kind of I don't know. Anyways. And then I also kind of am toying around with the idea of starting a YouTube channel. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again until one of you guys tells me, Zoe, fuck yeah, stop saying it and just fucking do it. Because I love the feeling that those YouTubers like Madeline RG, I love the feeling their videos give me. It's so comforting. And I know that I'm a comfort podcast for a lot of people, but I can also be a comfort YouTuber because I'm just on this transformation journey of my life where I'm focusing on health and not drinking and blah, 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 trying to get everything straight. And I think documenting that could be comforting and inspiring because you guys can go on this journey together with me. I feel like a lot of improvement, people that post on YouTube about life improvement stuff, I feel like they very often start the channel after they already did all the work and they're already good. And then they just talk about it instead of doing it in real time, you know? So I feel like I should do that. I'm just kind of it's a lot of effort. Editing videos is a lot of effort, but I would be down. I would be down. I think it's something I should really just fucking do. Anyways, enough about me. Today I wanted to talk about, how do I frame this? The fear of being perceived, but not in the traditional, what we see everybody talk about on TikTok sense, which is are you afraid of being perceived? Well, you need to cure your fear of being perceived if you want to be famous. Like, I don't mean that. And I don't know if that's only a TikTok bubble I'm in or if you guys have seen that too. But I mean the fear of being perceived in sex and in dating and just in general hookup culture, etc. And not even just that. Like the whole thing of like, why does wanting, especially wanting openly, feel so unsafe? Not just in sex, not just in dating, but the moment where like the desire becomes visible, where someone can see that you care and that you want and that you're invested. Because I've been noticing these like patterns in myself where the discomfort isn't actually about intimacy or connection, but about being perceived while wanting. And I arrived at the realization through dating and through sex and through moments where my body reacted before my brain had a language for it. So this episode is me following that thread, that strain of thought that I had, those experiences that I've experienced, because I've now understood that with me understanding things about my life and sharing them on the internet, you guys are also understanding things about your lives, which is the coolest feeling ever. So let's do that some more with this episode. Okay, so before I even get into dating or sex or men, I need to explain what this fear actually feels like because it's very subtle. I feel like most of the time, it just feels like a general awareness, right? Like you're in your body, but you're also watching yourself in your body. You're not just existing, you're like monitoring and I can't talk right now, Jesus fuck, and self-surveilling and like evaluating and like checking yourself all the time. We do this all the time as women. And I feel like this happens way more than we'd like to admit. And it also happens in moments that are supposed to be instinctive and even in moments that are supposed to be embodied, like during intimacy and touch and kissing. You'd think that would be like the one place where this stops and you just reach flow state and you're just in the moment and you're just like during kissing, for example, your eyes are closed. So what the fuck is there to be paranoid about? But even then, even in moments where I'm making out with someone, I notice myself thinking. I'm like clocking how we're kissing. I'm noticing the rhythm. I'm adjusting myself to match theirs. And sure, if the kissing is bad, then there's not so much observing you can do because there's no fucking flow. Like if they don't know how to kiss, there's nothing to fucking figure out or match or whatever. There's like nothing to drop into. But if they're kissing, if they're good at kissing, and if we're in sync, so hot. I fucking love that shit. I fucking miss kissing, bro. Oh my God. But I feel like also I love kissing because I feel like it's one of the few moments in life where I feel like I actually let go. Like I never let go. I'm one of those people that is like such an anxious, like tensed up motherfucker that I never just chill the fuck out. Like I never chill out. And like kissing is one of those few activities where I drop into the flow and where my body and brain are finally doing the same thing. Like, I feel like making out is one of those like rare times where I feel present without trying to be. There's this like rhythm to it, this back and forth, this wave where I can disappear a little bit, right? But I also feel like those moments where I'm letting go and like I'm reaching flow state in kissing and I'm just fully like finally not fucking thinking for once. Even then, there are moments where the awareness comes back. It's like a wave. It goes like in and out. Because like, for example, when you are in that moment where you're making out with somebody and then you're taking your clothes off, whatever, there is like this in and out movement between letting go and becoming aware again. Like there are moments where I'm fully there thinking about what I should do next. And then there's moments where I'm suddenly like there are moments where I'm fully present. And then there's moments where I'm suddenly watching myself again and thinking about what I should do next. You know what I mean? And then like once the sex actually starts, that whole like self-surveillance thing is fully back. Like it's so interesting how I can like let go and reach flow state when I'm making out. But like when you start the whole sex process of it all, it's like that doesn't happen. It's so interesting. That's so interesting. And I feel like during sex, women, we think a lot about like how we look and how we're moving and how we're coming across, and am I doing this right? Am I being too much or not enough? And noticing that shift, that like fucking mind fucks me, because it just makes me realize that this is not about the desire disappearing. It's about, I think, the visibility increases, right? Because like this whole self-surveillance thing, it just never fully stops. It just like fades into the background sometimes. And that's like when I stopped thinking of it as an insecurity and started seeing it as like training. Like we're raised knowing we're being watched. Our bodies get commented on, our desirability gets evaluated, our worth gets measured. So at some point, we internalize the watcher. And this takes me back to like my first hit episode, Why I Hate When Men Look at Me, which is basically what that entire episode is about is this. And I based it a lot on Margaret Atwood's idea that women are taught to watch themselves being watched, right? There's a man living inside our heads, watching me be a woman, deciding if I'm doing it right. And this doesn't shut off ever, especially during intimacy. I feel like it gets even louder because intimacy is when you're most visible. Your body is visible, your desire, your effort, your care. So instead of fully feeling, you start managing an image. You're not asking, how does this feel for me? You're asking, how am I coming across? And once I noticed that, a lot of how am I coming across? And I feel like once you are aware of this man that's living inside your head, and once you've understood that you're your own voyeur, so many other things start falling into place and making sense. For example, all the pressure that comes with dating, because dating triggers the exact same thing. Dating doesn't start in the body, dating starts in the mind. So from the moment you sit across from someone, you're already being perceived. And you know it, like you're being looked at, evaluated, interpreted. That's literally what dating is, right? So before anything even has a chance to feel natural, the self-surveillance is already there. Like I'm noticing and paying attention to how I'm sitting and how I'm speaking and how interested I seem, how interested I don't seem, whether I'm asking the right questions, am I revealing too much, am I holding back too much? And what is wild is this happens even when I'm not really into the guy. Like when you're on a Hinge date and within the first hour you kind of determine this is not a match, this is not the one, and I'm like just unsure, but I'll still like catch myself wanting to impress them and wanting to come across well and wanting them to like me, which tells us that it's not always really about finding someone you're connecting with. It's also about validation. And I think part of the reason that matters so much is because being chosen as a woman by a man still carries so much weight in society. There's just so much of our value is just tied to being wanted by a man, being publicly claimed by a man, being picked by a man to be his wife, the mother of his kids, blah, 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 blah. And that like in society functions as proof that you're desirable, proof that you're worthy, proof that you did something right, even if we don't consciously agree. Actually, wait, you know what? I'll fucking take that back. I'm taking back the part where I said being chosen to be the mother of their kids. Because it's not true. A woman is only seen valuable as a mother in society when she is not a single one. So ultimately, our value is measured by whether a man picks and chooses us or not to be by his side, publicly claims us, etc. So anyways, even if we don't like consciously agree with this idea, it's in the air. It's just what it is. It's just what it fucking is. It's the hierarchy of society. It's just what it is. So like dating never just feels like, do I like this person? It feels like, what does this interaction say about me? Am I someone who gets chosen? Am I someone who's wanted? Am I someone who's easy to love? And suddenly the stakes feel higher than they should be. Dating becomes this constant low-level audition where you're trying to strike the perfect balance. Interested, but not desperate. Confident, but not intimidating. Warm, but not intense. Cool, but not detached. And that balance is so bloody exhausting because you're never fully relaxed. Like you're never fully dropped in. You're always slightly like on, you know? So when people say things like dating should be fun and just be yourself, I'm like, sure, yeah, in theory, but in practice, dating is a space where your desire is visible before safety is established. And that's the dangerous part because wanting someone or even just wanting to be wanted immediately puts you in a vulnerable position because it means you can lose something. It means you can be rejected and you can be misread. And that fear then kicks in, right? And this is where like nonchalance becomes currency because the less you seem to want, the safer you are. The less you care, the less there is to take away from you. So instead of asking, do I like this person? You start asking, how am I coming across? And instead of following attraction, you manage perception, which is why dating can feel so disconnected, even when it's polite, even when it's fun, even when the other person is kind. You're there, but you're also watching yourself be there. And once I really understood that, once I felt how similar this is to what happens in my body during intimacy, something else suddenly clicked. Because if dating is like an audition process and you're constantly self-surveilling and you're never really just chilling the fuck out and showing up as you and prioritizing whether you like the guy, but you're prioritizing impressing them, then of course, situations that remove that pressure should feel relieving, right? And like, okay, I don't know why I'm connecting these two topics so weirdly. What I'm trying to fucking dive into is that the other day my friend sent me a TikTok and it was a woman that was talking about how after a breakup she hired a straight male escort. And she was saying that it was one of the best experiences she's ever fucking had. And honestly, I remember thinking, like, I watched this TikTok and I was like, yeah, period. That makes so much fucking sense. Because it's like when you are hiring somebody to fuck you or to be there for you or like make everything about you and your desires, then it removes that pressure that dating puts on those situations. This is not about being evaluated. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not wondering how you're coming across. You're not performing desirability. You're paying for something very specific. Attention without judgment and desire without ambiguity and intimacy without that audition. So there's no question of being chosen because you already are. And the more I sat with that, the more I realized why it felt so relieving to even imagine this as like a fantasy. Because in that setup, wanting isn't risky. Like you're allowed to want. You're allowed to ask for what you like. You're allowed to take up space. There's no social meaning attached to it. No, like, what does this say about me? No fear of being rejected. It's all like contained. And like, I just suddenly understood why transactional intimacy could feel emotionally safer than dating, at least in theory. Because as much as I would like to be somebody that can just randomly enjoy casual sex, I am someone that needs some sort of a emotional or intellectual connection. And I know that I'm, a ball full of anxiety, and removing the pressure that dating puts on me would probably help in some sort of sense. But at the end of the day, I would probably sit there with this male escort and be like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I don't feel any sexual attraction towards you because I need a second with people. Like, I can never just fuck people because they're hot. You know what I'm saying? But also, who knows? I'm just going by like what I know about myself, but also who the fuck knows? I've never hired a male escort before, so maybe I should for research purposes. Oh God. But okay, so dating asks us to be vulnerable with what we want, right? Before we're safe. And it asks us to reveal desire while we're being evaluated by another person. And it asks us to care without guarantees. And the escort situation removes all of that. There's no guessing game. There's no power imbalance. There's no fear of wanting more than the other person. And honestly, if a situation where desire is visible but contained feels safer than dating, then the fear isn't about sex, right? It's about what happens when desire is seen, remembered, and can be taken away. And that you'd think that means like, I don't know if this makes sense, but like if the relief in that whole male escort hiring story is from not being evaluated and there's not this auditioning pressure and none of that jazz that happens in the dating world matters in that situation because you don't have to perform and you don't have to worry about like whether you're going to be chosen or not, then what happens when those conditions are present in real life? What happens when you're with someone who is kind and who is safe and who desires you without making you earn it? Because if this fear is really about being perceived, then safety alone should fix it, no? Wrong. Absolutely fucking not, because I ended up in a situation that in theory should have disproven all of it, right? The last guy I was dating, context for anybody that's new here, I hadn't been involved with men for years. Like, I was hung up on my ex for a long time. Then there was this whole detox from my ex era, and honestly just a phase of not wanting to deal with men or sex or any of that at all. And then suddenly for once, I just for some random reason started dating again. And then like the first fucking guy that I go on a date with from Hinge just ended up being like a match, more or less. Like we had a little flingy fling. And he was a good guy. Like he was kind and respectful and he desired me in a way that felt healthy. And he wasn't weird about bodies or hair or period blood or just, he wasn't weird about reality. And that's exactly what I want in my man, is like exactly fucking that, bro. Anyways, he just didn't make me feel like I had to change anything about myself to be attractive to him. And he made me feel normal and wanted and seen and all the good stuff. Which is exactly why I'm like, if he made me feel so safe, this should have been a situation where everything unlocks, right? This is where the guards should have come down. This is where I finally feel fully at home in my body. But I didn't. Not completely, at least. And that's when I was like confused, because I'm like, if he was safe, why was I still holding back? And what I mean with like holding back is like, I don't mean I was emotionally distant. I don't mean I was closed off. I mean very specifically sexually. I was holding back that part of me. The confident part, the intentional part, the part that knows what she likes and doesn't pretend she doesn't. You know what I mean? Like that whole part that only comes out when you feel 100% comfortable with somebody and you're not afraid to be a little fucking porn star. You know what I'm saying? That porn star energy. And it's funny that I'm calling it this, and we'll get more into why later. But like, literally, I just mean that porn star energy in the sense of like being present and engaged and not afraid to make eye contact and taking up space. And that hunger, like not being afraid to show that you have that desire and that hunger. And I know that part of me, though. It exists because I've been her before. I know what I like. I know how I show up when I feel fully embodied. But I noticed that I only really let myself access that part under very specific conditions. Either when I feel completely chosen, like in a relationship, secure, held, certain kind of way, or when I feel like I'm about to lose something. And that second one is a little harder to admit, because when I look back at my ex, the one who didn't, the abusive one, you know, the motherfucker, I know that deep down, I always felt like I was losing him, right? Like he was always like half gone. And instead of pulling back, I tried harder. I showed up more, I gave more, I performed more, as if my desire and like my effort and my body and my presence could somehow convince him to stay. And that's not manipulation, that's fear. That is literal fear. So with the last guy that I was seeing, it was like kind of strange because I didn't feel like I was losing him, but I also didn't yet feel fully chosen, which meant this like survival driven version of me didn't activate, but neither did the fully safe, fully held version. So I was like stuck in the middle. I was wanting him, but like holding myself back at the same time. And I was like desiring, but still self-monitoring and present, but not fully embodied. And that's like, I don't know, safety alone. I think the lesson I've learned here is that safety alone doesn't undo self-surveillance, because this fear wasn't about whether he was safe or making me feel safe. It was about what it means for me to be seen wanting something, right? That's what it fucking is about. And that realization is what pushed me into this next layer of the episode, the one about like desire and performance and power. So once I realized that safety alone doesn't dissolve this fear, I had to obviously zoom out. Because if it's not about the man, and it's not about whether he's kind or safe or respectful, then it has to be about something bigger. And that's when I like started thinking about desire itself, about who gets to want and what happens when women want openly. Because here's the thing that feels uncomfortable to admit. Wanting doesn't feel neutral. Wanting feels risky. The moment I want something or someone, there's this immediate awareness of exposure, like I'm revealing information I might later regret giving away. Because wanting shows I fucking care. It shows investment, and it shows that something fucking matters. And the moment something matters, you can lose it. So instead of desire feeling like freedom, it starts feeling like leverage, like something that can be used against you. And I think that's why so many of us learn to manage desire instead of following it. Does that make sense? Like we soften it and like we act so chill and we pretend like we could take it or leave it because nonchalance is safer. Like nonchalance doesn't expose you and it doesn't give anyone power over you. Nonchalance doesn't risk like rejection in the same way, right? And culturally, nonchalance is rewarded. I don't even know if I'm saying this fucking word right. I've said nonchalance, not nonchalance. It's like rewarded, especially in women, like being the chill girl, being the cool girl, being unbothered, being low maintenance, blah, 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 all that jazz. And there's this quiet message that wanting too openly makes you needy and embarrassing and intense and unattractive. Bro, the misogyny goes crazy because when men want, it's like they're devoted and passionate and like so romantic. But it's just like, we never like, as women, we really have to become better at asking, what do I want? Because we so like often just ask how much of my wanting is acceptable. You know what I mean? And that's where that whole performance thing creeps in, because once you're managing how your desire is perceived, you're no longer desiring. You're performing desire. You're choosing when to show it and how much to show and in what way. And this is where that porn star energy thing like becomes interesting, because on the surface it looks like confidence, power, freedom, but like when you sit with it, even like you kind of understand that even that version of sexiness is a script. It's still legible femininity. Like it's still a role. It's still a role being played in a system that rewards women for being desirable in very specific ways. So whether I'm playing innocent or hyper confident, am I actually choosing anything freely, or am I just choosing between two acceptable versions of being a woman? Because if I'm being honest, so much of the time I am not moving from instinct. I'm moving from how I think I'm being read. I'm not asking myself, what do I feel like doing right now? I'm asking, how is this coming across? Because real freedom wouldn't be like about being the good girl or the hot girl. It would be about like not having to perform at all, just wanting and just moving and responding without this whole fucking narrating myself bullshit. And all of this made me see that desire isn't just personal. It's shaped by power and by culture, by what we've been taught is attractive, acceptable, rewarded. Like, where does our ideas of sexiness even come from? We didn't grow up in a vacuum. Like, nobody fucking did. We grew up with porn, with images, with stories, with movies and music videos and Instagram and jokes and like the fucking comments and the whispers and this is not me saying that porn is evil or that desire isn't real or that we're all brainwashed. That's not what this is. I'm just like acknowledging that desire doesn't come from nowhere. Every desire lives inside a context. And porn especially becomes a reference point very early on. Even if you're not watching it obsessively, even if you think it doesn't affect you that much, like your brain still learns through repetition. Like arousal plus image equals association. And the more often you see that shit, like over time, certain things start to feel hot, not necessarily because they came from your body first, but because your body learned to respond to them. And what's interesting is that the kind of sex most of us are exposed to is very performance based. It's very visual, very goal oriented, very focused on how things look rather than how they feel. And it's very centered around male pleasure and male validation and male approval. So when I talk about that porn star energy, what I actually mean is something really specific. I mean confidence and presence and intentionality and knowing what you're doing and not apologizing for being in your body. And the reason that energy reads as powerful is because we've been taught that this is what power and sex looks like, which forced me to ask myself something that felt uncomfortable but also weirdly grounding. It's like, is this what I want, or is this what I learned was hot? And obviously the answer is that this is what I learned was hot. It can be both. Sometimes in my case, it's just what I learned was hot. And that's okay. But like, I think where it gets tricky is when we start confusing desire with validation, right? Because when we start confusing wanting something with wanting to be wanted, then like when I look back at the version of me that showed up hardest when I was about to lose someone, that's not embodied by desire. That was performance. That was me trying to secure attachment through and with my body. And porn culture kind of reinforces that idea, right? That if you're good enough in bed and you're hot enough and confident enough and exciting enough, you'll be chosen, you'll be kept, you'll be valued. So like desire slowly turns into a tool, not because you're manipulative, but because you're human. And I think this is where a lot of women get stuck because we're told to be sexually liberated, but we're not really taught how to tell the difference between freedom and performance, between like, this turns me on and this makes me feel chosen, between I want this and I want to be wanted. And sometimes those things overlap so much that they're impossible to separate. That doesn't mean you're fake. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you're navigating desire in a system that didn't exactly center your pleasure or your safety, which is why I don't think the question is, should we change what we like? Should we change our kings? Should we unlearn everything? Is this ethical or unethical? I think the question is softer than that. I think it's more like, how does this feel in my body? Do I feel powerful or anxious? Do I feel present or like I'm performing? Do I feel more myself or less? Because two people can be doing the exact same thing in bed and have completely different internal experiences. And that's where agency lives. And since I just mentioned kinks, I kind of want to build on this because the episode that I released 2 weeks ago, I've received some comments and thoughts, and I love it when you guys share your thoughts with me on episodes. Because like, okay, so 2 weeks ago, my take was very much, my position was very much like no king shaming, people like what they like, consent is what matters, end of story. And I still believe that shame is not the answer because shame shuts everything down. Shame makes people lie to themselves. Shame makes people unsafe. It's stupid. But I also think I didn't yet have the language for the ethical layer, which is why I appreciate all the thoughts you guys shared with me, because I then went down this fucking rabbit hole. And I found this thesis. It was called The Ethics of Kink by Jessica Masterson. And it really challenged me. Because one of the main arguments she makes is that consent, while absolutely necessary, is not always sufficient to make a sexual dynamic ethical. And I remember feeling kind of like, this is so interesting because everybody always makes consent out to be the number one, like that's all that fucking matters, right? Like we're taught that consent is the line. And that once someone says yes, that's it, you're good to go. But as I continued reading this thesis, I understood she has such a great point because she says that people consent for very different reasons. You can consent because you're curious. You can consent because you feel safe, because something genuinely turns you on. But you can also consent because you're afraid of losing someone, which is what I did. You can consent because you don't want to disappoint them, which is what I did. You can saying no in those cases feels riskier than saying yes because you think this is the price of being chosen. And that distinction matters so much because when I look back at my own life with my ex, there were moments where I technically consented to things, but emotionally I was bargaining. I wasn't choosing from a place of freedom. I was choosing from a place of instability and of fear and of wanting to be kept. And that's where Jessica's argument just really hit me, because she basically says that consent doesn't magically neutralize harm if the conditions around that consent are shaped by inequality, fear, or lack of real alternatives. And dude, if we like take it back to the episode where I said that I like being slapped during sex, I mean, definitely in some contexts, that sensation has felt exciting and grounding and even playful. But what this research forced me to ask myself is not, is slapping okay or not okay? It's when and why does it feel okay? Because there's this huge difference between wanting intensity from a place of safety versus wanting intensity to regulate fear, attachment, or worth. And consent alone doesn't tell you which one you're in. That's the uncomfortable part, because two experiences can look identical from the outside and feel completely different on the inside. One can feel expansive and chosen and alive, and the other can feel like shrinking, even if you said yes to both, you know? So I don't think that like, it's such an interesting subject. I don't think ethical desire is about avoiding power. Power is always there, no matter what. I think it's like, I think the distinction, I don't know. I don't think the takeaway is stop liking what you like. I don't think the takeaway is everything is fine as long as there's consent. I think the takeaway is it's just learning how to tell the difference between desire that comes from safety and desire that comes from fear, question mark. And I feel like once you can feel that difference in your body, you can't unfeel it. And I'm curious to observe this with whoever is going to be my next sexual partner. I don't know. It's really everybody, I mean, it's just really interesting. It's just so fucking interesting. Oh my God. You know what I forgot to mention earlier that I feel like is kind of relevant to the whole like porn thing and how we grew up and all the things that taught us about how we're meant to have sex and shit like that. I feel like understanding where desire comes from doesn't mean we have to dismantle it all the time. Like, as in, what I'm trying to say is just because something was shaped by culture doesn't mean it's not real. Love is shaped by culture. Beauty, money, gender, all of that is shaped by culture. And all of those things matter. So I'm not like interested in purity. I'm not interested in policing people's desires. I'm not interested in telling women what they should or shouldn't want. I'm interested in choice and in awareness and being able to say, yes, this turns me on and I know why, or no, this doesn't feel good for me, even if it's supposed to. And that's actually where, like, you know, the whole ethics conversation around kink is so interesting. Because it's not about judgment. It's like, I don't know. Okay, so I feel like, okay, so the question is not like, the question is, what is the question? The question is, how do I feel again? Or for the first time, how do I feel? Question mark. Because so much of what I've been talking about lives in the head, right? The monitoring, the managing, the self-surveillance, the performing, always the thinking. I wanted to say three and thinking in the same word, thinking. Always thinking 3 steps ahead, wondering how you're coming across, wondering what it means, wondering if you're doing everything right. And at some point you realize, all I want is less noise. All I want is to be in my body without watching myself in it. That's all I fucking want. And I think this is also mentioned in the thesis that I read from Jessica. It's called sensate focus. It's a type of sex therapy. And I thought it was so interesting because sensate focus tackles exactly those things. It's not about being hot or performing or like orgasm. It's not about, because I feel like sex, straight people sex is so goal oriented. Like the goal is to make him come or whatever. And sensate focus therapy is, it's not about orgasm, and it's not about pleasing someone else. It's about sensation and touch and presence and no goals and no doing it right and no one is being watched. Like, it just really stuck with me because it's literally designed specifically to undo that performance anxiety and to help people stop evaluating themselves while being touched. So to literally come back to like how something feels instead of how it looks, which feels kind of radical actually and so fucking cool. Because like when I think about what I want beyond sex and beyond desire, it's that I want safety in my body. Like, I want to be able to move without narrating myself. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to want without calculating the consequences. And I think that's the version of desire that I'm trying to get closer to. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just desire, just desire as something that happens when I feel safe enough to be present. I don't think the goal is to I don't think the goal is to sanitize sex or to get rid of kink or analyze blah, blah, blah. And I think like the goal is just noticing. Noticing when something feels grounding and when it feels anxious, and noticing when desire expands you and when it shrinks you. Because those signals are so quiet, but they're super consistent. And the more that I will try to listen to them and the more you guys should try to listen to them, the less I feel like I need to audition or perform or prove anything. I don't know. I don't want to be chill. I don't want to like be unbothered. I just want to be here and in my body and in my wanting without being afraid of being seen. Like, what am I so afraid of? I without like, what am I so afraid of? Like, I'm just afraid. I think I'm afraid of being abandoned and rejected and not taken seriously. And it's just why? It's like, why am I so afraid of that? I literally remember like before the guy that I was seeing and I had sex for the first time, literally as we were making out in my bed, I remember the first words that came out of my mouth was, I'm scared, because dead ass, like, I am scared. But what am I so afraid of? It's so funny. This was good exposure therapy. I don't know. I don't think the point of this episode, I don't know what the point of this episode is. I think the point of this fucking episode was to bring us closer to a place where we can fucking have the strength to communicate what we want without feeling embarrassed or ashamed or like scared that we're going to get rejected for it, where we can openly want and desire without being scared or ashamed. You know what I mean? Like, and this isn't just a problem for me in the world of intimacy and sex. I have this in everyday situations. Like, sometimes I just have a really hard time just saying what I want. Like, even if it's about somebody asking if they can get me something from a grocery store. Because I just never want to be a burden with my needs. But I guess that's like a conversation for another day. Love you guys. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. I feel like this was a lot. My brain is kind of hurting. I don't even know if I covered everything I wanted to cover, but I hope I did. And I'll see y'all next week. You know where to find me. Lowkey Chaotic Podcast everywhere.com. Just kidding. I don't have a website, but you get the vibes. Bye-bye. Toodaloo.